All right, so everyone, today we will be doing simple interest and compound interest. What is simple interest? So when you borrow money, or let's say you borrow money from a bank, right? It's going to be called a principal, all right? So this is money borrowed, basically, generally, money borrowed. From wherever, the bank, from a person, that's your principal, money borrowed. Now, you're going to have something called an interest rate, right? And this is what you have to, your interest rate is the interest payable on the money borrowed. So of course, you know, you borrow money from the bank, you don't just go back and give the bank all the money that you borrowed. You have to pay them something additional, which is called interest, right? So the interest payable on the money borrowed. Right? And then we'll have time, the length of time for the loan. And when we sum these three categories together, we can work out our simple interest. And the formula, this is actually identified just as I. The simple interest formula is your principal, identified as P, by your rate, identified by R, by your time, over 100. And it's actually over 100 because your rate is a percent, right? So like how we have 5%, the 5 is going to be on top and the 100 is going to be at the bottom. So this is also shortcutted as PRT over 100. So sometimes they won't ask you for the simple interest. They will give you the simple interest and they may ask you for your principal, your rate, or your time, right? And we are going to make each one of them the subject of the formula. So just to reiterate, our simple interest formula is equal to principal by rate by time over 100. That's if you're solving for your simple interest. If you are not solving for your simple interest, let's say you're solving for your principal. Your principal will now be 100 by I. I'm just going to call this I, right? 100 because we're making P the subject of the formula. So we'll send across the 100 to multiply. So 100 I, and we'll send across the R and the T to divide. So it's 100 I over RT. That's your formula to find your principal. Your formula to find your rate will be similar. Your rate is equal to 100 I. And of course, it's your rate, so you're sending across your principal and your time to divide. And if you want to find your time, very similar, 100 I all over your rate, your principal by your rate. So whether they ask you to find your interest, your principal, your rate, or your time, this is the foundation. This is the starting formula. And then you can make any one of them the subject of the formula.
So it's 100 by I
Yes.
multiply. Okay.
Yes.
The same for the PT and the PR and RT. Those are all multiplied.
Multiplication. Yes, correct. So let's get into an example. Mrs. Lord borrowed $10,000 from a bank at an interest rate of 8% per annum for 3 years. So they want A. What is the amount? So they want you to calculate the simple interest amount, right? Now, when you work out your simple interest, that's just the interest you have to pay them back, right? And now let's get into that. What is $10,000? Of course, we take our time and read the question and highlight the different parts for the information that we seek, right? So the $10,000 would be our principal. Interest rate, of course, would be our rate. 3 years will be our time. It's key to remember or know that time is calculated in years, right? Put that in. That will be very important moving forward. Your time is calculated in years. So when you see 3 in your formula, that 3 should represent years. So we started our formula. I is equal to P RT over 100. And we know our P is 10,000 multiplied by the rate, which is, we're just going to put 8 because remember the 100 is going at the bottom. 8 multiplied by 3 years, right? All over the 100. And then when we work that out, we will get $2,400 interest. So after 3 years, at a rate of 8%, borrowing $10,000, you are going to pay back an interest of $2,400. Now they want to find out now the amount payable. So I know that you guys would have remembered amount payable, right? From when we did hire purchase, right? Now in this case,
the outstanding balance plus the interest.
Yes. So in this case, the outstanding balance is the principal, right? So your amount payable is your principal plus your interest. Because remember, we are not making a down payment or anything like that. So your principal will be $10,000. Add your interest, which is from above $2,400, which is equal to 12,400, and that's your amount payable. Now part C, if they ask you to determine the amount of each monthly installment, what we will have to do now is, of course, go back to the reference where they said it is You have 3 years to repay your loan, right? So we know that will be your monthly installments will be the amount payable divided by the time, right? Which is 3 years. So of course, it's going to be 12,400, and we need to do this by months, right? So 3 years by 12. So that's going to be 36 months. And therefore, we will be paying $344.44 per month. For 3 years. We have another example on the screen. Simple interest on a sum of money invested for 6 months at 5% interest per annum is $1,680. Determine the amount of money invested. So now we see that they are not asking us for interest. So of course we take our time, we highlight the information. So simple interest on a sum of money invested for 6 months. So 6 months will be time, 5% interest rate. This 1680, they said simple interest on a sum of money invested for 6 months at 5% interest per annum is. So simple interest is. So this is our interest. Yeah, they just put a set of stuff in between it to make it look like the principal. A lot of people will just run and assume that was the principal, right? So they said simple interest on a sum of money invested for 6. So on a sum of money also tells you that we don't know the sum of money. For 6 months at 5% interest per annum is 1680. Determine the amount of money invested. So the amount of money invested, of course, is the principal. So what's your formula for principal? 100I over RT. So that's going to be 100 by your simple interest, which is your 1680, over your rate, which is, of course, your rate is 5 over.
Wait, yes. I thought you said the principal is money borrowed from a bank or a person or something else.
So this question is like from the bank's perspective.
Or invested in that person, that particular person.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 100 by the 1680 by the rate, which is 5. Of course, the 100 is already here, so you don't need to put in another 100 by time, which is, how much is the time? 6 months, but remember it's time in years. So if you put 6 there, that will come across as 6 years, but it's not 6 months. So once you have months, you put it over 12 to represent 6 out of 12 months. So which is a half of a year. Yeah. Anytime you have months, you put it over 12 so that it will represent the time in years. So let's simplify this. Any questions?
Why did we put it 6 over the 12 again? I'm just making notes.
Because it's time in years. 6 months.
For that
You have
particular
to,
formula.
you just put your months over 12 to represent a year.
Well, say in that formula, the requirements for calculation is years, not months. That's why you have to put it over 12.
Yes. Because time is calculated in years, as we would have mentioned here, right? So if you put 6, the question will read as 6 years, but it's not 6 years, it's 6 months. So in order for you to represent it as a year, you say 6 over 12. So that will be a half of a year. Yeah?
Yes.
So when we simplify that, you should get 67,200. Of course, don't just write down my answer. Work it out in your calculator as well.
And when you have it in the bracket, this means to multiply.
Yes. You can put your multiplication sign if you want, brackets, anyone.
Because I think I did something wrong. I keep getting 16,800.
Yes, I get the same thing.
1 second. Okay, you all said you all were getting what?
16,800.
Here, you divide it. When you multiply the top, you'll get 16,800, I believe. Yeah, 100.
You had 67,200.
Yep, that's my full answer when I divide it as well. 100 multiplied by 1680 is 100. Actually, that's 168,000. This is your top. This is what you all have for the top. Or this
16.
is
No, that
No,
by
the
the whole-
total. Yeah,
the total, yeah.
16,800.
right. So
No,
what we're going to do now is multiply 5 by 0.5, right?
Because you have 168,000 rather than 16,000.
100 multiplied by 1680 is 168,000. Like we move in the 0 2 places to the right, 1680 by 100 will be 168,000 because we're adding on 2 more zeros. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's 168,000 at the top, right?
Oh, you're doing it piece by, okay.
Yeah, I'm doing it piece by piece for you all to see the answer you're talking about, right? So 168,000 for the top, right? And then it's going to be 5 multiplied by 0.5, which is 2.5. Yeah? And then when we divide that, 168,000 divided by 2.5, you'll get 67,200. So what were you guys doing? You can't put this entire thing into the calculator, you all.
Wait, what? That's how you get the 2.5.
5
I know the 6
multiplied,
divided.
5 multiplied by 0.5. Or 5 multiplied by 6 over 12, 6 divided by 12, 2.5. So that's why we have brackets, right? Brackets is our best friend. Stop just putting random stuff in the calculator. If you put If you put
So I use the
5
bracket.
by 6 divided by 12, the brackets will say 30, then divided by 12.
I use the
So,
bracket.
which will still give you the 2.5 anyways. So how did you use brackets and get, so what, did you put the entire thing into the calculator?
I put the entire thing.
Yeah, because 100 multiplied by 1680, and then here's what you did, right? You put divided. Did you put 100 by 1680 in brackets? No, right?
Yeah. But put the multiply is not what that signifies.
Did you put 180 multiplied by 1680 in brackets?
No, I just put
Right.
100 multiplied by 1.
So 100 multiplied by 1680, you put that, and then you went straight to put in divide.
Yeah.
5 multiplied
Open brackets.
by 6 over 12, right?
Yeah. 6 divided
So
by
your calculator is smart, but it still needs your guidance. If you didn't put brackets, you did not tell the calculator that this is one thing at the top and this is one thing at the bottom. Your calculator did 168,000, and then it divided it by 5, and then it multiplied the answer by 0.5. Yeah? You understand what happened there, right? So it only divided by 5, and then it multiplied that answer. So if you look at it, divided by 5 multiplied by 0.5, it would have said 168,000 divided by 5 multiplied by 0.5. Yeah. So when you divide it by 5, you would have gotten 33,600, and then you multiply it by 0.5, 0.5, which would have given you 16,800. So your calculator, you did not tell your calculator that there was a numerator and a denominator. You'll understand the importance of brackets if you put in an entire question in the calculator.
Yes, I understand now.
Right? So don't cheat it. Huh?
It worked, miss. The calculator wasn't dumb after all.
The calculator what?
The calculator wasn't dumb after all. It just worked with the brackets. Not separated.
The calculator is not dumb. The calculator is a genius, but you need to guide the calculator. Yeah, because remember, the calculator doesn't have a brain. You do, right? So you still need to tell the calculator, well, oh, this is the top of my equation and this is the bottom of my equation. So therefore you have to put the top in brackets, then the bottom in brackets. So it will now function and work out your question correctly. Yeah, but guys, put your steps, work out the top, work out the bottom, and then divide it. I think you should have known that, right? Yeah?
You think what? You should
I
have
think
what?
you should have knew that. Yeah? Because we would have done questions like these when we were doing fractions and decimals, and never did you go from here to here, right? So not because I write the answer means that that is what you have to do as well. Put in your work in and make sure that your answer matches my answer. Yeah? Are we good there? Any questions? All right, so the simple interest on $8,500 invested for 6. So let's highlight what is what, who is what. So simple interest on 8,500, what is this? Simple interest on 8,500. What's that 8,500? Let's go quickly. We have another subject to finish tonight as well. What's the 8,500?
Principal.
Principal. Invested for 6.5 years. What's this?
Time.
What's the 3867.50?
Seeing the is, so I'm guessing the interest. Simple interest.
Nice. So what they want to work out? The rate, right? What's our formula? Rate is equal to 100I over PT. So 100 by interest, which is 3867.50 all over principal, which is 8,500 multiplied by time. So this is already in years, so we can put 6.5, right? And your answer will be, of course, you put in your middle step and make sure your answer matches my answer. Why I have a dollar sign? It's a percent as your answer. 7% rate. So simplify your stuff and make sure you get 7%, please. We are continuing with compound interest. Now, compound interest is literally what it sounds like, interest that is compounded. So where we would have worked out simple interest, the interest is not reinvested on the principal. So your principal is $10,000. At the end of 3 years, you pay or you receive an interest, a sum interest. Now in compound interest, you have $10,000 and you are investing this for 3 years or borrowing this for 3 years, but your interest is now being compounded. So at the end of each year, you are adding the interest. So first year, you work out your interest and you add it to your principal. So at the start of the second year, your principal is no longer $10,000. It's about $10,200. And then you work out the interest again. So at the end of that, now you are getting a greater principal, a greater interest, and you are adding back your interest to your principal again. So at the start of the third year, your principal would have increased a second time, right? And then you keep repeating it. So this could be a little tedious if you keep doing it at the end of each year. So our compound interest formula to work it out completely would be A is equal to P, open brackets, 1 plus R over 100, close brackets, all raised to the power of N, where A is your amount accrued after N years. So the total, your principal and your interest. Your P and your R remains the same above, which is your principal and your rate. And your N is just like your T, the number of years, right? So let us get into an example to see this hands-on.
Yes. What?
So our compound interest is equal to the amount accrued minus our principal. So after we work out our A, this is just the principal and the interest after several years. To find the interest alone, we say the amount accrued minus the principal, which will give us our compounded interest. Now, we did a simple interest question at the beginning, which had a principal of 10,000, a rate of 8%, and a time of 3 years. So now we're going to see the difference with compound interest and simple interest and how it's reinvested, right? So let's just work it out together. Our formula is A is equal to P, open brackets, 1 plus R over 100, all to the power of N. So we know that our P.
Yes, and we are looking for compound interest.
Yes.
Which is A minus P.
And
we gotta find A first.
Find A first.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So P is $10,000. Open bracket 1 plus R, which is 8, and of course 8 over 100, to the power of n, and we know n is the amount of time in years, which is 3. And Bodmas says, work out what's in the brackets first. So it's going to be 10,000, but multiply by 1.08. When you add that, you're going to get 1.08 raised to the power of 3. After brackets and Bodmas, we have to work out power. So it's going to be 10 by 10,000 multiplied by 1.08 cubed, which is 1.259712. Of course, you don't need to write all of this because you can multiply by 10,000 one time, which will be 12597.12. So this is our amount accrued. So now that we would have found our amount accrued, we know that our compound interest is A minus P, and our A, which we would have just solved, $12,597.12 minus the principal, which was $10,000. And of course, the difference will be 2597.12. So we see that this is a little more than what we would have received from the simple interest, which was about 2,400, I believe. Yeah, because we kept adding back the money and growing our interest, or growing our principal in each new year. Let's get into an example of depreciation. A Mazda 323 was bought in January 1996 for $27,000. So that's the principal. An insurance company decides to calculate its depreciation as 5%, as the rate. And this question wants us to work out the book value after 3 years. So we know it's depreciation. So we say A is equal to P, 1 minus R over 100 to the power of N, which is 27,000, open brackets, 1 minus 5 over 100 to the power of 3, which will give me, of course, I have to subtract 27,000 by, that will be 0.95, right, to the power of 3. And I could work this whole thing out in the calculator. I can put 27,000, open brackets, 0.95, close brackets, cubed, which will tell me this amount is 23,149.13, right? And the amount by which it depreciates for the period, we know that the depreciation will actually be our principal minus our accrued amount or our book value, because remember this is depreciating, so this will be less than our principal, right? Oh, I think I wrote it wrong above here. Principal minus your book value, right? Because remember, if something is depreciated, the amount you pay for it will be more than how much it's worth after a few years, right? So your principal, which would be the 27,000, is going to minus how much it's depreciated by. All right, and that will tell us that our depreciation value after so long was 3805.88. Let me make sure. 87. Yeah. So that's your depreciation amount after the period.